Imagine waking up in a stranger's bed, not just any bed, but the guest room of your closest friend, the one person who's been your anchor through the storm of life. Your head throbs from last night's haze, your clothes feel wrong, out of place, and a cold dread twists in your gut as fragments of memory flicker like broken film reels. You turn to him, heart pounding, and whisper the words that shatter everything. Last night, did you strip me? His face crumples, eyes wide with regret, and he replies, I'm sorry, that was my fault. In that single moment, trust fractures, guilt ignites, and two souls teeter on the edge of redemption or ruin. But what if one mistake could unravel the threads of grief, faith, and unspoken love, only to weave them into something stronger? Stick with me through this raw, heart-wrenching journey of accountability and healing, because by the end, you'll see how true forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but about becoming unbreakable. In the quiet coastal town of Seaview, Oregon, where the Pacific Ocean whispered secrets to the jagged cliffs, Marcus Harlan lived a life draped in shadows. 3 years had passed since the accident that stole his wife, Emily, from him, a foggy night on Highway 101, a drunk driver crossing the median, and suddenly, the world went silent. Marcus, once a vibrant architect dreaming of building homes that lasted lifetimes, had traded his blueprints for a wrench and a uniform as a maintenance supervisor at Seaview General Hospital. It was steady work, the kind that kept his hands busy and his mind numb. The hospital's fluorescent lights and echoing hallways became his refuge, a place where he could fix broken pipes and flickering bulbs, pretending he could mend the cracks in his own heart. Rachel Thompson had arrived in Seaview 2 years ago, fleeing the ghosts of her own past, a failed engagement in Chicago that left her questioning love, trust, and everything in between. With her gentle smile and unwavering compassion, she fit seamlessly into the hospital as a nurse in the oncology ward. Rachel carried her faith like a quiet flame, not the blazing kind that preached from rooftops, but the soft glow that warmed those around her. She volunteered at the local church's soup kitchen on weekends, her hands always ready to hold a patient's during their darkest hours. It was there, in the sterile corridors of the hospital, that she first met Marcus. He was repairing a leaky faucet in the break room when she spilled her coffee, laughing it off with a quip about how clumsiness was her superpower. From that clumsy encounter, a friendship bloomed, slow at first, like spring thawing the Oregon frost. They started with small talks over cafeteria lunches, sharing stories of loss and laughter. Marcus opened up about Emily, how her love for painting the ocean waves still haunted his empty home, the canvases gathering dust in the attic. Rachel spoke of her ex-fiancé, how his betrayal had shaken her belief in vulnerability. Soon, lunches turned into after-work walks along the beach, where the crashing waves drowned out their unspoken pains. Marcus found solace in Rachel's presence. She was a reminder that life could still hold kindness. Rachel, in turn, admired Marcus's quiet strength, the way he fixed things without fanfare, a metaphor for the man he was trying to become. Their bond deepened with late-night phone calls, where whispers of dreams and fears filled the silence. "You're not alone in this," Rachel would say, her voice a lifeline. Marcus would reply, "Neither are you," feeling a spark he hadn't known since Emily. But loneliness has a way of blurring lines, especially in a town where winters brought relentless rain and isolation. One fateful evening, the hospital hosted its annual fundraiser, a gala in the community center to support the oncology wing. Marcus and Rachel attended together, not as a date, but as friends supporting a cause close to their hearts. The night was filled with laughter, toasts, and a few too many glasses of wine to chase away the chill. As the event wound down, a storm rolled in from the sea, fierce and unforgiving, with winds howling like wounded animals and rain pelting the windows like accusations. Rachel's car was parked a mile away, and driving in that torrent seemed suicidal. "Stay at my place," Marcus offered, his voice steady but his eyes betraying exhaustion. "The guest room's clean, and it's just down the block." Rachel hesitated, but the storm's fury decided for her. "Okay, but just for the night," she said, trusting the friend she'd come to rely on. They arrived at Marcus's modest bungalow, drenched and shivering. He lent her dry clothes, an old sweatshirt of Emily's that still carried a faint scent of lavender, and they settled in the living room with mugs of hot tea. The conversation flowed easily at first, reminiscing about the gala's highlights, but as the hours ticked by, it delved deeper. Marcus spoke of his grief, how it felt like an anchor dragging him under the waves. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever surface," he admitted, his voice cracking. Rachel reached for his hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "Faith isn't about never drowning, Marcus. It's about knowing there's a hand to pull you up." They talked of loneliness, of the ache for connection in a world that felt so vast and empty. Exhaustion crept in, the wine's haze softening edges, and they moved to the couch, continuing their confessions until sleep claimed them both, tangled in blankets and vulnerability. The morning light filtered through the curtains like a reluctant witness. Rachel stirred first, her head pounding, disoriented by the unfamiliar room. She was in the guest bed. How had she gotten there? Her clothes were askew, not quite right, and a vague discomfort lingered in her body, memories fragmented like shattered glass. Panic rose as she pieced together the night, the storm, the tea, the deep talks, and then nothing clear. Marcus appeared in the doorway with coffee, his face pale. "Rachel, are you okay?" he asked, concern etching his features. She sat up, clutching the sheets, her voice trembling. "Last night, did you strip me? I don't remember, everything feels wrong." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Marcus's world tilted. In his half-asleep state, carrying her to bed when she dozed off on the couch, he'd helped adjust her clothes assuming comfort, a careless act born of fatigue and blurred judgment, no malice intended but boundaries undeniably crossed. "I'm sorry," he stammered, horror dawning. "That was my fault. I didn't mean to. God, Rachel, I'm so sorry." Tears welled in her eyes, trust fracturing like ice under pressure. She dressed quickly, mumbling excuses, and fled into the stormy aftermath, leaving Marcus alone with the echo of his mistake. Guilt consumed Marcus like a tidal wave. He replayed the night endlessly, dissecting every moment where exhaustion and unspoken feelings had dulled his vigilance. How could he, a man who'd vowed to honor Emily's memory with integrity, fail so profoundly? The hospital became a minefield, glimpses of Rachel in the halls twisted the knife deeper. She avoided him, her compassionate eyes now guarded, and whispers among colleagues hinted at the rift. Marcus's grief resurfaced, amplified. Emily's loss had taught him pain, but this self-inflicted wound taught him shame. He sought solace in the church he'd abandoned after the accident, confiding in Pastor Thomas, an elderly mentor with a voice like weathered oak. "Repentance isn't just words, son," Thomas said. "It's change. Face the why, and build the how." Marcus began therapy, sessions with Dr. Elena Ruiz, a counselor at the hospital's wellness center. "Your loneliness isn't an excuse," she challenged gently. "But understanding it is the first step to healing." Through tears and revelations, Marcus confronted his vulnerabilities, the unprocessed grief, the fear of being alone forever, the subtle ways he'd leaned on Rachel without ensuring her safety. He volunteered at the local shelter, fixing leaks and serving meals, finding purpose in acts of service that mirrored his need for redemption. Unsent letters piled up in his drawer, apologies to Rachel, reflections on respect, vows to live differently. Faith, once a distant memory, flickered back to life, not as blind belief, but as a call to vigilance and love measured by actions. Meanwhile, Rachel navigated her own storm. The incident shook her to her core, dredging up echoes of her past betrayal. "How could I be so naive?" she confided in Hannah, her co-worker and confidant, during a tearful lunch. Hannah, a no-nonsense nurse with a heart of gold, urged her to seek support. Rachel turned to her pastor and a support group, processing the pain of violated trust. "It wasn't assault," she acknowledged, "but it was a breach, and that hurts." Space became her sanctuary. She focused on her patients, channeling empathy into healing others while mending herself. Doubts plagued her, about Marcus, about her judgment, about opening her heart again. Yet, glimmers of his character persisted, his immediate ownership, no deflections or denials. As weeks turned to months, anger softened into understanding, not excusing the act but recognizing the human frailty behind it. Rachel prayed for clarity, her faith a compass through the fog, teaching her that forgiveness was a choice, not an obligation, but one that could free her if earned. As spring painted Seaview in blooms of wildflowers, the distance between Marcus and Rachel began to bridge, not by force, but by tentative steps. Marcus respected her space, sending a single letter, not an excuse, but an acknowledgement. I failed you, and I'm working to ensure I never fail anyone like that again. Your trust mattered more than I showed, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. Rachel read it multiple times, weighing the words against her healing heart. One crisp afternoon, she reached out via text, "Can we talk?" The park by the lighthouse, neutral ground. Marcus agreed, his pulse racing with a mix of hope and fear. They met under a sky streaked with sunset hues, benches overlooking the ocean that had witnessed so many of their shared moments. Boundaries were clear, no hugs, no assumptions. Rachel spoke first, her voice steady but laced with emotion. What happened that night, it broke something in me. I felt exposed, unsafe in a place I thought was secure. Tears escaped as she recounted her pain, the sleepless nights, the eroded self-trust. Marcus listened without interruption, his own eyes glistening. "I own it all," he said when she finished. "My grief made me blind, but that's no justification. Therapy has shown me how loneliness can warp judgment, but I've learned, through service, through faith, that true care means constant awareness. I'm not asking for absolution, I'm showing you change." He shared his journey, the shelter work, where he'd helped women rebuild lives shattered by breaches of trust, the church involvement, leading a men's group on accountability, the ongoing therapy that peeled back layers of unhealed wounds. "Emily's death taught me loss," he admitted, "but this taught me responsibility." Rachel nodded, absorbing his words. "I've been healing too," she shared. "With friends, prayer, time. I see your effort, Marcus. It's not erased, but it's acknowledged." The conversation flowed with pauses for tears and reflections, honest and raw. They spoke of faith's role, how it demanded not perfection, but progression, how grace wasn't a free pass, but a path to prevent harm. Forgiveness emerged not as a sudden wave, but a slow tide, earned through consistency. "I forgive you," Rachel said finally, "not because it was small, but because you've become someone who won't repeat it." Relief washed over Marcus, but he knew it wasn't the end. Forgiveness was ongoing, a commitment to respect. Their relationship transformed, no longer teetering on unspoken romance, but settling into a mature friendship with clear lines. Marcus continued his growth, his home no longer a shrine to loss but a space for new beginnings. He dated cautiously, applying lessons learned, finding joy in small victories like painting the ocean himself, honoring Emily while embracing life. Rachel, empowered by her resilience, accepted a promotion to head nurse in a Colorado hospital, a fresh start in the mountains where she could spread her compassion anew. "This isn't goodbye," she told Marcus at the airport, a platonic hug sealing their peace. "It's growth." As Rachel's plane ascended, Marcus stood watching, a quiet smile on his face. The incident, once a scar, had become a scar tissue, stronger, a reminder of vulnerability's cost and redemption's reward. Back in Seaview, he mentored others, sharing his story anonymously in church circles. Accountability isn't punishment, it's the grace that stops the cycle. Faith proves itself in correction, love in respect. Rachel, in her new life, carried the lesson forward, advocating for boundary education in her ward, turning pain into purpose. In the end, their journey whispers an inspiring truth: mistakes don't define us if we own them fully. Healing blooms from truth, forgiveness from change, and second chances from becoming worthy of them. No matter the storms we face, with faith as our anchor and accountability as our sail, we can navigate to shores of wholeness, reminding us that even in our brokenness, we are capable of profound, unbreakable light.